told you that the bright yellow turmeric sitting in your kitchen pantry right now might actually be laced with a highly neurotoxic metal?
It's a terrifying
Yep.
thought.
And, what if the people who put it there didn't just do it by accident, but actually sat down and calculated exactly how likely they were to get away with it?
I mean, it is a chilling reality. We all operate on this fundamental social contract that our food is, well, what it says it is.
Right.
But when you look closely at the industrial food supply, you see that this basic trust is routinely weaponized.
Weaponized, yeah. And that is exactly why we are doing this deep dive today. So welcome. We're looking at a truly gripping and honestly pretty unsettling monograph by Dr. Ryan Baidya.
Yes, it's titled Food Adulteration as Slow Mass Destruction.
Right. And the primary mission of our deep dive today is to completely reframe how you, the listener, think about food adulteration. Because if you're like me, you probably always thought of this as just some petty economic offense. Just a little misbranding, right? Exactly. Somebody watering down the milk to make an extra buck. But the author argues that this is actually a form of commercialized violence.
Yeah, he calls it slow mass destruction. And that framing is a vital paradigm shift for us. Over the course of this discussion, we're going to explore the toxic reality of the food chain in India.
Which is just staggering to read about.
It really is. We'll look at the devastating human and economic costs of this deception and analyze the failure of the governance systems that are, supposed to protect citizens.
And finally, we'll look at a radical, citizen-powered blueprint for fixing the system from the ground up.
It's a fascinating proposed solution.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can really understand why the regulatory system is broken, we have to look at what is actually happening on our dinner plates.
Absolutely.
And reading through this research, I realized this isn't just like adding a little extra water to a jug. It's like a macabre reverse alchemy experiment.
That is a very accurate way to describe it.
Right, like wholesome food is being chemically altered into literal poison purely for profit.
Yeah, the mechanics of it are horrifying. The monograph details just a staggering variety of deception. It categorizes these adulterants to show how methodical this reverse alchemy really is.
So where do we even start?
Well, let's start with the chemical adulterants, like the turmeric you mentioned in the hook.
Oh, yeah, the yellow dye.
Right. To give older or lower quality turmeric that vibrant, beautiful yellow appearance that consumers look for, adulterators use metanyl yellow, which is a non-permitted industrial dye.
Which is bad enough on its own.
Exactly. But even worse, they use lead chromate.
Lead, in a daily spice. I have to ask, why lead chromate specifically? That sounds incredibly dangerous to even handle, let alone eat.
It all comes down to basic ruthless economics. Lead chromate is incredibly cheap.
Okay.
It's normally used as a pigment in industrial paints to create a brilliant, opaque yellow. So when mixed with turmeric root, it provides this flawless visual mimicry of a high-quality spice.
Wow. So the adulterator gets to charge premium prices for a substandard product.
Precisely. And the consumer unknowingly ingests the heavy metal that severely damages the nervous system over time.
It's just horrifying. And, the deception in the dairy sector is arguably even more sophisticated. The text mentions they are using urea and detergents in milk.
Yes.
At first, I honestly couldn't understand why anyone would put fertilizer into milk.
Yeah, the underlying mechanism there is basically a masterclass in exploiting scientific testing.
How so?
Well, when food laboratories test milk to determine its protein content, they don't actually isolate the protein itself.
Oh, they don't?
No, they use a standard chemical procedure that measures the total amount of nitrogen in the liquid. This is because proteins naturally contain a specific ratio of nitrogen.
Ah, so they are just trying to trick the lab equipment.
That is the core of the issue. Urea is incredibly cheap and densely packed with nitrogen. So by dissolving urea into watered-down milk, the adulterator spikes the nitrogen levels.
And the lab just sees the nitrogen.
Exactly. When the lab tests it, the equipment reads a high nitrogen count and falsely concludes the milk have a high, healthy protein content.
That is incredibly devious. What about the detergents you mentioned?
Right. The detergents are added because real high-fat milk naturally foams when it's poured. Watered-down milk just looks flat.
I see.
So adding trace amounts of liquid detergent creates a rich-looking artificial froth that tricks the consumer's eye.
So they are reverse engineering the testing protocols and human psychology at the same time. There have even been raids detailed in the monograph where authorities discovered sulfuric acid being used to synthesize fake paneer.
It is hard to wrap your mind around.
It really is. But those are just the chemicals. The physical and biological adulterants are just as wild. The text talks about brick powder being mixed into red chili powder and sawdust used to bulk up coriander.
Yeah, physical bulking agents are all about increasing volume at the lowest possible cost. But the biological substitutes can be even more insidious.
Because they blend in better.
Exactly. They rely on perfect visual camouflage. A prime example in the text is the use of dried papaya seeds mixed into whole black pepper.
Right, because when a papaya seed dries out, it shrinks and wrinkles into a little black sphere that looks totally identical to a peppercorn.
And crucially, it weighs roughly the same.
Oh, wow.
So visual inspections and basic weight tests completely fail to detect it. But while papaya seeds are mostly just an irritating fraud, other biological adulterants are actually deadly.
Like the argarone seeds.
Yes. Toxic argamone seeds are frequently hidden in mustard seeds before they are pressed for oil, simply because the two seeds look remarkably similar in a massive harvest pile.
You know what really stood out to me is the absolute peak of absurdity in all this?
What's that?
The government actually publishes rapid test manuals for households, like official guides so you can take your groceries into your own kitchen, mix them with water or acid, and see if they're fake.
It's a surreal reality.
I mean, you shouldn't have to become an amateur chemist just to eat dinner safely.
As the author notes, when a government is forced to publish household detection methods for daily staples, it's undeniable proof that trust in the food chain has already severely degraded.
Yeah, the trust is just gone.
It's no longer occasional misconduct. It has become a systemic, baked-in feature of the market.
Okay, so we've just outlined a scenario where the very food meant to sustain us is laced with paint, pigments, and detergents. This everyday chemistry of deception clearly has a physical and historical body count.
Without a doubt.
Let's get into the actual toll this takes on the population.
Well, the medical consequences outlined in the text are severe and really multifaceted. The immediate acute effects can range from severe gastrointestinal distress to sudden allergic flare-ups from synthetic colors.
But it's the long-term stuff that's really scary, right?
Yes. The chronic long-term effects are where the author's concept of slow mass destruction truly materializes. We're talking about repeated, daily exposure leading to irreversible organ failure. We see neurological and developmental damage, especially in young children whose developing brains are exposed to the lead in spices.
And there are strongly linked carcinogenic risks too, right? Because they are using industrial preservatives to keep rotting food looking fresh. The text mentioned formalin.
Yes, formalin is essentially a solution of formaldehyde in water.
Which is embalming fluid.
Exactly. It is a highly toxic chemical, primarily used in morgues to preserve human tissue. And unscrupulous traders will spray it on fish or mix it into milk to vastly extend the shelf life.
Just so they don't have to pay for refrigeration.
Precisely. And ingesting formalin over a long period is a known aggressive carcinogen.
And the monograph doesn't just rely on medical theory. It backs this up with some truly tragic historical proof. I was reading about the 1998 Delhi epidemic dropsy outbreak.
Yeah, India's history offers repeated catastrophic warnings. That 1998 outbreak was caused by mustard oil deliberately adulterated with those poisonous argemone seeds we discussed earlier.
Oh.
The resulting condition, dropsy, causes extreme fluid accumulation in the body, severe glaucoma, and eventually congestive heart failure.
That sounds awful.
It was. It resulted in over 3,000 victims seeking hospitalization and more than 60 deaths.
Jeez.
And then there's the 2013 Bihar school meal tragedy, where 23 children died agonizing deaths after consuming a midday meal prepared with lethally contaminated cooking oil.
Okay, I want to pause and push back here for a second, because I want to make sure we aren't painting with too broad a brush or unnecessarily fear-mongering for the listener.
Fair enough.
I was looking at the FSSAI data provided in the text. That's the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, the main regulatory body.
Right.
It says that out of over 100,000 sampled analyzed in 2020 to 2021, about 28,000 were non-conforming, and about 5,200 were classified as structurally unsafe.
Yes, those are the official numbers.
Now, 5,200 unsafe samples is terrible, obviously, but out of 100,000, I mean, that means the vast majority of the food is safe. Are we overstating the crisis?
What's fascinating here is how broad statistics can obscure the terrifying reality of human exposure. Your numbers are perfectly accurate. It is a minority of samples.
Okay.
But we have to look at what specific items are failing these tests. The highest failure rates are consistently in items like milk, edible oils, and daily spices.
Things that almost every single household consumes literally every single day.
Exactly the point. Yeah. A small failure rate in a daily staple translates into massive, continuous public exposure.
I see.
For instance, the FSSAI's milk survey found aflatoxin M1 above permissible limits in nearly 6% of samples.
And what is aflatoxin M1?
It occurs when dairy cows are fed cheap, fungus-contaminated feed. The fungus produces a toxin that the cow metabolizes and secretes directly into her milk. It is a potent liver carcinogen. Now, if you apply a 6% contamination rate to a population of over 1 billion people consuming milk daily, that is not a marginal issue. Millions of people are ingesting a carcinogen with their morning tea. It is a silent pandemic.
So the sheer scale of the population magnifies a small percentage into a staggering public health burden.
Exactly. And the Monograph points out that beyond the human body count, there is a massive hidden economic cost too.
Oh, yeah, it punishes honest sellers.
Absolutely.
If you are a local dairy producer refusing to cut corners, you have to price your milk to cover the cost of healthy cows and clean facilities.
Right, yeah.
You cannot possibly compete against someone who is artificially churning out thousands of liters of liquid using water, urea, and detergent for pennies on the dollar.
It creates a perverse market where fraud is actually a competitive advantage. The honest businessman is driven out of the market, and the criminal thrives.
Which is just a race to the bottom.
And this dynamic drains national wealth through soaring medical bills and lost workdays. It sabotages long-term national development by literally weakening the physical human capital of the country.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We've just outlined a scenario where millions of people are being slowly poisoned, hospitals are filling up, and honest businesses are going bankrupt.
Yeah.
In any normal society, that level of overt harm would trigger massive panic and immediate arrests. I mean, India isn't a lawless place.
From it.
The Monograph points out that there are actually tough laws on the books. So why aren't the perpetrators terrified of the law?
That is the pivotal question of the entire Monograph. And it brings us to Dr. Baidya's core thesis regarding governance breakdown. He calls it the failure of fear.
The failure of fear. I love that phrasing. It explains so much.
It perfectly captures the structural enabler of the crime. On paper, the Food Safety and Standards Act is incredibly harsh. If unsafe food causes death, the law can mandate life imprisonment and massive fines.
So the penalty is there.
Yes. To understand why this doesn't work, the author briefly contrasts India's environment with China's approach to illustrate what he calls projected severity.
You're referring to the 2008 melamine milk scandal in China, right? Where they were putting industrial plasticizer into baby formula.
Yes. After that scandal, which killed several infants and caused severe kidney damage in hundreds of thousands more, the Chinese state reacted with overwhelming force.
What did they do?
They executed 2 of the primary ringleaders and handed down severe life sentences to several corporate executives.
Wow.
The text points this out not to advocate for capital punishment, but to demonstrate what unmistakable, unavoidable state severity looks like. The message sent to the market was absolute.
Whereas in India, the deterrence is breaking down somewhere along the chain. The fear just isn't reaching the criminal.
Exactly. In India, deterrence breaks down because offenders do not calculate their risk based on the maximum theoretical penalty written in a law book.
Yeah.
They calculate the probability of actually facing those consequences.
Right. It's a cold, hard math problem.
Exactly. They ask themselves.
Like, what is the probability of a health inspector actually showing up at my warehouse today?
And if inspected, what is the probability of the state laboratory accurately finding the adulterant?
Right.
If the lab finds it, what is the probability of delayed prosecution in a backlogged court system? And ultimately, what is the possibility of using bribery or political influence to quietly settle the matter before it ever sees a judge?
So the entire chain is compromised.
Because the enforcement system is plagued by fragmented inspections, manipulatable laboratories, and local political protection, the mathematical probability of actually facing that life sentence is incredibly low.
So the enforcement system itself has become, as the author says, adulterated.
That's a great way to put it.
The criminal isn't scared because the system meant to catch them is compromised. But wait, I'm stuck on something here.
What's that?
If the local inspector is taking bribes to ignore the sawdust in the spices, and the lab technician is falsifying the nitrogen tests for the milk, who is supposed to catch the inspector? It feels like an endless loop of corruption.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, your confusion highlights exactly why a purely trader-focused solution will always fail.
Right.
You cannot just raid the spice vendor. if the government official overseeing the raid is getting a cut of the profits,
It makes no sense.
which is why the author proposes a radical structural reform, the POP architecture.
POP, police of police.
Yes, a dedicated POP Food Integrity Authority. This would be a massive independent institution empowered to investigate not just the food offenders, but the entire enforcement chain itself.
They are the ones who police the police.
Exactly.
How would that actually work in practice, though, across a country as massive as India?
They would operate through covert integrity testing. They'd send decoy samples to state laboratories to see if the labs are clearing toxic food.
Oh, like secret shoppers, but for food safety?
Exactly. They would forensically audit local regulatory offices that seem to have miraculously low violation rates.
Because if they're finding nothing, they're probably hiding something.
Right. They would investigate the unexplained, disproportionate assets of local food safety officials who seem to be looking the other way while their districts are flooded with fake paneer.
I really like how the monograph breaks down the punishment under this new authority into a 4-tier system. It maps out the entire ecosystem of the crime, ensuring nobody can just pass the buck.
It is a brilliant way to operationalize accountability. The first tier is the direct adulterator, the person physically mixing the lead chromate or the acid.
Makes sense.
The second tier is the commercial collaborator. This is the massive distributor or the retail chain who knowingly turns a blind eye to the source.
Right, the ones who say, hey, I didn't make it, I just sell it. But they know exactly why the wholesale price is suspiciously cheap.
Exactly. Then the third tier targets the regulatory enabler, the corrupt inspector or lab official who actively suppresses the enforcement for a bribe.
The weak links in the chain.
And finally, the fourth tier is for supervisory or political protection. The higher-up bureaucrats or local politicians who knowingly tolerate endemic, large-scale food crimes in their jurisdiction in exchange for campaign funding or kickbacks.
So what does this all mean for the person listening right now?
Well,
Because building a massive new independent regulatory body that polices politicians and scientists sounds great, but it also sounds like something that takes decades, billions of rupees, and a massive amount of political willpower.
it's a huge undertaking, yes.
Where does the everyday citizen fit into this grand regulatory overhaul?
This is where the monograph is incredibly forward-thinking. It recognizes a fundamental logistical reality. In a country of India's scale, with millions of street vendors, local dairies, and massive supply chains, the state simply cannot see everything.
It's impossible.
It is impossible to hire enough inspectors. But citizens are already everywhere. They are in every market, every kitchen, and every restaurant. The author proposes that the citizen is actually the first wall of protection.
And their primary weapon is the smartphone.
The modern smartphone, yes. With its high-definition camera, unalterable timestamp, precise GPS location data, and ability to rapidly transmit information, it creates a distributed grassroots monitoring network.
That's infinitely larger and more powerful than any government inspection department could ever hope to be.
Exactly.
But wait, people can already complain, right? I mean, if I get a bad batch of milk, I can tweet at the company or call a local consumer hotline or leave a bad review. How is this proposed system any different from what we already do?
It's entirely different because of the immense legal weight attached to it. The author proposes a centralized, hybrid public interest portal directly linked to the POP authority.
Okay.
If you, the citizen, upload a clear photo of fake paneer separating in a pan or a suspiciously bright spice, complete with the timestamp and location of the vendor, that submission legally becomes an initial official notice.
Wow. So it forces their hand. It's not just a suggestion, it's a legal trigger.
Yes. Once received by the portal, the local health authority is under a strict statutory duty to acknowledge, inspect the vendor, and act within fixed public deadlines.
And if they don't?
Here's the genius part. If the local authority ignores the complaint or takes a bribe to dismiss it, that non-action automatically triggers a supervisory review by the higher POP authority.
Oh, wow.
The citizen transforms from a helpless, shouting complainant into a lawful, undeniable trigger of state enforcement.
But here is the massive elephant in the room, and I'm so glad the author addresses this head on.
Go ahead.
If I live in a mid-sized town and I use an app to report the local dairy mafia or a politically connected wholesaler who is cutting the flour with chalk, I am putting a massive target on my back.
You are.
We read stories all the time about people getting harassed, financially boycotted, or even physically harmed for blowing the whistle on local corruption.
Which is why the single most crucial detail of this entire technological system is a concept the author calls identity non-retention.
Explain how that works, because it sounds vital to getting anyone to actually use the system.
In most systems, anonymity is just an option you click, but your data is still sitting on a server somewhere.
Right, someone can always find it.
Under identity non-retention, anonymity is the absolute unalterable foundation. The platform is designed to preserve the evidence, but irreversibly destroy the identity of the person who submitted it.
Irreversibly.
Irreversibly. Once your photo, GPS location, and timestamp are validated by the system's algorithm and a formal case record is generated, every single piece of identifying information,
Like my name and number.
your name, your phone number, your IP address, your device ID, it is all permanently cryptographically deleted from the servers.
That's brilliant. It's essentially a burner identity for the evidence. The safest whistleblower is the one the system itself cannot identify.
You've touched on the most insidious part of local corruption: the ability to find and silence the witness.
Yeah.
Under this system, you might receive a random, anonymous, alphanumeric case token so you can check the status of your complaint online.
Okay.
But if a corrupt local official or an angry cartel boss hacks the system or demands to know who reported them, the system literally cannot give you up. It no longer knows who you are.
It completely severs the link between the citizen and the complaint.
Exactly, protecting the honest individual from the abuses of an imperfect state.
It is a complete flip of the power dynamic. Right now, the criminals use the banality of everyday food to hide their crimes in plain sight.
Yes.
But this proposed system uses the everyday ubiquity of the smartphone to expose them while shielding the citizen entirely.
It creates an ecosystem of perfect deterrence. The adulterator actually fears the law because the citizens are watching.
Right.
The corrupt official fears exposure because the POP authority is watching the unalterable data. And the citizen finally feels safe enough to trigger justice without fear of retribution.
Okay, let's take a breath and recap the intense journey we've been on during this deep dive.
It's been a lot to cover.
We started by looking at the unsettling, hidden chemistry on our plates. The neurotoxic lead dyes, the urea, and the formalin that turn wholesome staples into literal poison for profit.
Right.
We examine the devastating human toll this takes, acting as a slow, silent pandemic that drains a nation's health and economic wealth.
A true tragedy.
And we uncovered the systemic failure of fear, realizing that the probability of getting caught is so low that even the strictest laws fail to deter criminals, largely because the enforcement chain itself is compromised.
Exactly.
And finally, we explored a truly radical solution: a POP authority to police the regulators, triggered by an anonymous, legally binding citizen watchdog network powered by everyday smartphones.
It is a comprehensive, deeply researched blueprint for systemic change. But before we finish today, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, drawing on the Monograph's mention of Viksit Bharat.
Which is India's grand vision for becoming a fully developed, world-class nation.
Exactly. We so often measure a country's development by its concrete and steel. We look at the size of its international airports, the length of its high-speed expressways, the massive growth of its GDP.
Sure, the visible stuff.
But as Dr. Baidya so poignantly points out, every civilization ultimately reveals itself by what it normalizes.
By what it accepts as just the way things are.
Yes. If a society normalizes the slow, methodical poisoning of its own citizens for profit, if its systems tell the honest trader that ethics are a financial handicap, and tell the everyday consumer that surviving dinner depends on luck rather than the republic.
Can it really be considered developed?
Exactly. Can any amount of shiny infrastructure truly make it a developed nation? This raises an important question. Does true national development start not with macroeconomic growth and skyscrapers, but with the moral integrity of the very food on our plates?
That is a profoundly powerful question to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you. Keep looking closely at the invisible systems we take for granted. And remember, the next time you sit down for dinner and take that first bite, you aren't just trusting the chef. You are trusting an entire hidden ecosystem. Let's make sure it's one worthy of that trust. See you next time.